Today, we're diving into the life of Tulsidas, a 16th century poet whose words would literally shape the spiritual world for an entire nation.
And trust me, that is not an exaggeration. We're talking about a work so powerful, so woven into the fabric of the culture, that for hundreds of millions of people, it's not just a book. It's their moral compass, their spiritual guide, and a source of comfort every single day.
You know, when a figure like Mahatma Gandhi says something like this, you have to stop and pay attention. He saw this work as the absolute pinnacle of devotion, a true masterpiece that spoke right to the heart. So that's the big question, right? How does that happen? Well, that is the incredible story we're going to unpack right now. It is a journey from total obscurity and worldly obsession to spiritual enlightenment and a legacy that has lasted for centuries. Okay, let's get into it.
All right, first things first. To really get a handle on just how important this man was, we need to look at the sheer scale of what he gave us. He wasn't just a writer. You could really call him a cultural architect.
Now, what's so fascinating here is just how wide his influence was. His epic, the Ramcharitmanas, retold the ancient story of Rama. And here's the kicker. He didn't write it in the elite, scholarly Sanskrit that only priests could read. Nope. He wrote it in the language of the people, the language of the street. That was a radical, revolutionary act. He also gave us the Hanuman Chalisa, which is one of the most recited prayers in all of Hinduism. He even founded the Ramlila plays, this folk theater tradition that is still going strong today. And his couplets, his dohas, they're like these timeless little nuggets of wisdom about how to live a good life.
But you know, to really understand the saint, you've got to meet the man first. And his early life, man, it was a mix of these legendary signs and some really, really tough times.
So the stories about his birth are, well, they're pretty out there. The legend says he was born not crying, but actually speaking the name of God. And that's why his first name was Rambala, which means he who uttered Rama.
But you know, for all these amazing signs, his reality was incredibly harsh. His parents abandoned him because they thought his birth was a bad omen. He was taken in by a housemaid, but she died when he was just 5 years old, leaving him as an orphan, basically forced to wander from door to door just to survive.
Then, as a young man, he finally found an anchor, his wife, Ratnavali. But his affection for her, it wasn't just love. It was this all-consuming, almost obsessive passion. He absolutely could not stand to be away from her, not even for a moment. And this intense attachment would become the very thing that triggered his complete transformation.
And these are the words that changed everything. The story goes he swam across a raging river in a storm, just to be with her. And when he arrived, she hit him with this powerful line. I mean, can you imagine? It just pierced his heart. She told him to take all that intense, worldly love and point it towards God. And in that one moment, he just let it all go. And just like that, he walked out of his home that night and never looked back. This kicks off the next huge chapter of his life, his journey as a wandering ascetic, searching for a direct vision of God. And this was no short trip. We're talking 14 years on the road, traveling all across India, visiting sacred sites. And get this, tradition says that in the city of Varanasi, he meets the deity Hanuman, who is disguised as an old leper listening to his talks. And it was through Hanuman's help that Tulsidas was finally given what he was searching for, a direct vision, a darshan of Lord Rama himself. Okay, so while that traditional story is incredibly powerful, it's really important to know that modern scholars have some different takes on it. His exact birth year is up for debate, and some scholars even question the whole Ratnavali story, suggesting that he might have been a celibate ascetic his whole life, and that the story was a later, more symbolic addition to his biography. So, whether he was a husband who saw the light or a lifelong ascetic, his spiritual journey led him to create his masterpiece, and it all hinged on one single, absolutely revolutionary choice. And this is the thing you really have to understand. Before Tulsidas, the story of Rama was basically locked away in Sanskrit, a language that only the priests and the scholars could understand. By choosing to write in Avadi, the dialect spoken in the fields and in the streets, he did something incredible. He democratized the sacred. He brought God out of the temple and into everybody's home. And wow, was he prolific. The Ramcharitmanas is the big one, of course, but just look at the range of his work here. You've got the Vinaya Patrika, which is this really heartfelt petition to Lord Rama. And then there's the beloved Hanuman Chalisa, a hymn that literally millions of people recite every single day. His writings were basically a complete spiritual library for the average person.
So, what's the big idea behind his work? What made it connect so deeply with people? Well, at its core, he did something brilliant. He brought two different ways of thinking about God together.
Okay, so in Hindu philosophy, you kind of had these two big camps. On one side, you have Nirguna Brahman, this idea of God as a formless, abstract, absolute reality. And on the other, you have Saguna Brahman, God with a personal form, with qualities you can relate to, like Lord Rama. And these two ideas were often seen as totally separate, maybe even competing with each other. And this is where Tulsidas was just so smart. He showed that these weren't two different gods at all, but just two sides of the same coin. He used this amazing analogy of water and ice. He said the Nirguna is like formless water, and the Saguna is like ice. Same stuff, right? Just one has a form. So what turns the water into ice? For Tulsidas, the answer was bhakti, that intense, pure, loving devotion from a follower.
So it's this combination, this ability to bring big ideas together, to make them accessible to everyone, and to inspire that deep devotion. That's why his legacy is still so powerful today, more than 400 years later.
Just let that sink in for a minute. Akbar the Great was one of the most powerful emperors on the planet at that time. And this historian is saying that Tulsidas, a poet saint, had a bigger, more lasting impact on the hearts and minds of the people of India. That's... wow. Okay, so let's wrap this all up. If you're going to remember 5 things about Tulsidas, these are the ones. First, he was the people's poet. He took these sacred stories and gave them back to everyone. Second, his own life is this powerful example of turning worldly passion into divine love. Third, he was the great synthesizer, bringing different schools of Hindu thought together. Fourth, he was a true cultural architect, founding the Ram Leela tradition. And finally, and this is maybe the most important part, his voice isn't some relic of the past. It's alive. It's a living, breathing tradition recited daily by millions around the world.
And that really leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? In a world that can feel so fractured and divided sometimes, what is the real power of a single story that can bring millions of people together and keep them together for centuries on end?